FSD Africa is special. We are a regional program operating in more than 30 countries, making finance work for Africa's future. Set up by the UK government, FSD Africa has helped drive economic growth over the past 10 years. From policy and regulatory reform to capacity strengthening and improving financial infrastructure.
We established FSD Africa in Nairobi in 2012, recognizing that Africa's shallow financial markets were a key blocker to growth and prosperity.
Mark Napier founded FSD Africa and had Warushi Totia as his first colleague.
So when FSD Africa was set up, it was very much with a view to building skills in, I guess, smaller banks, microfinance institutions. And one of the problems has always been a lack of ability to develop products, a lack of capacity around regulation and that sort of things.
So it was exciting. People were excited about the ideas that FSD Africa was going to do, and they were happy to be joining us. So the morale was high. It was good energy.
But we really needed to adopt a much more sort of holistic approach than just concentrating on people's skills. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about how can we integrate a research and evidence function into all the work that we do.
So initially when we began resourcing for people, we were mostly focusing on the financial sector. So a lot of people came in from the banks, and then we started to expand a little. People were actually doing investments. So like the first two assistants we actually got to work in some of the pillars were working in venture capital firms. So we actually engaged them, and so like he said, he was building out the idea. Apart from capacity building, we're going into capital markets, into investments, and so he was buffering the team, and that's how we started.
So I think more importantly, they gave me a lot of latitude to be able to develop a strategy, and over a period probably of about 6 to 9 months, really, all told. I remember pretty clearly spending a lot of time on that, and the final document of 150 slides was pretty weighty, but it meant that we'd been able to consult with a whole range of different people in the US, in Europe, in Kenya, in other parts of Africa, to really try and get the right proposition in place.
FSD Africa is a very unique organization. So we were set up to deepen, build and strengthen the financial markets through, activating the right kind of policies and through activating the right kind of, novel ideas which sort of catalyze funding into some of these initiatives.
I think we are unique because we play a very catalytic role. We don't simply make investments for a quick buck. We make investments for long-term sustainability. We make investments to drive new vehicles, new mechanisms of driving capital.
So I think our role as a facilitator is unique, and the fact that we are nimble, we're able to deploy resources in the right way to support deployment of ideas, because what we bring is ideas, and we try and look at these ideas, can they work, can we replicate these ideas in other markets, to create the change and the impact that we want.
Above it all, the one thing that we all have in common is we love Africa. We want to see big things for Africa. Our tagline is making finance work for Africa's future. And we all share that passion, that ambition, yeah?
We have addressed systemic challenges in Africa's financial markets with the aim of sparking large-scale and long-term change. Through our investment arm, FSD Africa Investments, we have provided below-market rate funds to make financial markets more competitive and efficient.
We created FSD Africa Investments in 2016, and we pioneered this instrument, and its purpose was really to take on a lot of the early stage risk and new concepts that we think could drive transformation of the financial market. Our core purpose is to invest to change the way investment, the way capital, where finance flows to where it's needed in the economy. We are doing that with a very high appetite for risk.
So by 2017, we were given the chance to pilot £30 million worth of investment capital to invest in financial firms, financial institutions, to see whether that would have an impact in making markets more competitive, more innovative. And so that's how that all started.
So FSD Africa Investments is quite niche. So it does fill a gap that other investors are not filling. So I would say, one, we invest very early stage, high risk opportunities, basically with the aim of catalyzing green economic growth in Africa for the benefit of the African people and the planet as a whole.
Initially, we were trying to drive innovation, for example, in micro pensions. So really trying to find those intermediaries that were innovating. So we invested in an organization called People's Pension Trust in Ghana. They were pioneering a product to provide pension to informal workers. Obviously, there's been a big gap in that market, very difficult area to provide financing on a sustainable basis, and just a very innovative entrepreneurial company that we backed.
We've invested in a facility called Nyala Venture, which is basically looking to fill in a gap of investing in alternative local capital providers who are not readily able to get financing from banks. And then these alternative local capital providers then provide capital to small and growing businesses that cannot largely obtain funding readily in the market.
We have boosted the income of vulnerable groups and contributed to poverty reduction across the continent. Policy and regulatory reform has come about because of our efforts. Our work in building capacity and addressing systemic market challenges has achieved both short-term and long-term change. By tackling financial exclusion, we have helped 10.2 million people get access to financial services.
I'm very proud of what we've done in Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria in terms of building a community that are going to look at the future of insurance solutions by making sure that we are going to reach those particular persons that are currently underserved or completely not served within the insurance space, and building a very resilient ecosystem.
We worked with 3 financial institutions, namely Vision Fund Uganda, Equity Bank Uganda, and RUFI, which is Rural Finance Initiative. As part of the project, we were able to help them develop financial products and also track on how their financial product was working or doing with refugees.
Our capital markets pillar supports policy regulation and market infrastructure, including exchanges and credit enhancement facilities, by demonstrating capital market transactions.
Capital markets are very, very important for Africa for a number of reasons. One is that they help in financing Africa's economic and social transformation. We are not funding long-term projects using very short-term money, like buying essentially your house with a credit card. And then finally, we also have a number of institutional investors in Africa that are growing. We estimate we have about $1 trillion of assets under management across Africa, and it's growing. They need a home to invest in new asset classes and all that.
We then evolved, brought in capital markets, and that is really the recognition that it's not just individuals and businesses that need capital, it's also the economies in general. And also capital markets is a means to ensuring individuals and businesses also access capital needed for their own growth.
We work with different countries and different institutions to provide markets infrastructure development. We also provide support to institutions and regulators, and we support product development.
One of the defining transactions or partnerships that we had was with the CMA in Kenya, the Capital Market Authority in Kenya, and we had a major program with them around building HR skills, talent management. How can we sort of help change the culture of CMA in order to make it more responsive to the market, make it more respected by market practitioners.
FSD Africa has been very active in supporting initiatives of how do we certify people who operate within the securities markets.
Looking even at the CMA as an institution, they were able to step forward and really give us some fundamental support to bring in truly global quality in terms of the work we're trying to do on institutional and capacity development internally.
FSD Africa has valued our strong partnerships across Africa.
For carbon markets, we have a collaboration with Rabobank, which is looking at, supporting smallholder farmers to adopt sustainable agricultural practices by introducing agroforestry.
The outcome of this partnership have helped to strengthen SEC Nigeria's institutional capacity to carry out its twin mandates of regulation and development of the Nigerian capital market.
Bringing our own relationships to bear on FSD, understanding each other's needs, addressing and tackling the difficult problems that we wouldn't have been able to do on our own has been really valuable for Parhelion.
They have impacted seriously on these markets in terms of trying to create that technology-driven market for our different jurisdictions.
EABX has received tremendous support from FSD Africa. The support has gone towards key initiatives that include capital raising, sourcing for regulatory approvals, and establishment of key organizational processes.
InfraCredit provides local currency guarantees to mobilize domestic credit for infrastructure. And as we face the challenges of climate change, we need partners that can help to unlock more financing in the value chain.
And also mentoring of MEFMI fellows, especially in the area of local currency bond markets. In 2021, FSD extended a grant to MEFMI of £250,000.
And for our fund, in 2023, we are launching our $100 million Africa Climate Venture Builder Fund with FSDI as our anchor investor.
The need for a robust, resilient and efficient financial sector has never been more apparent.
It's a very timely intervention when Ethiopia is going through major social and economic reform, and at that pivotal time, FSD Ethiopia has begun to work and to contribute towards this major new market system formation. We are very excited about the future of the financial markets in Ethiopia. We're very excited about the digital financial opportunities, the opportunity for financial inclusion in Ethiopia.
Responding to shocks and sustainable financing of Africa's development are paramount. Since 2017, we have invested over £50 million into green initiatives.
And we're talking more and more about the green agenda, so that all this climate change talk, we are in it and we are trying to contribute something as FSD Africa so that we can change the narrative of Africa's future.
We invest very early stage, high risk opportunities, basically with the aim of catalyzing green economic growth in Africa for the benefit of the African people and the planet as a whole.
Yes, so we are very active in bringing new types of products in the market, and within that space we are particularly focused on green finance and the climate finance, where we've been very active developing the green bond market development in the continent. I think we probably have been responsible for probably 8 out of every 10 green bonds that have been issued in the continent.
Another one has been the climate finance training, where we are very keen on training policymakers, regulators, academic, institutional stakeholders and financial market players in general. And the reason we are training this group of people is so that we can see an acceleration of access to climate finance in Africa.
There's a very positive side to green economic development, which isn't just about the woefulness of what's happening on climate. There is actually a lot of opportunity around green, which, and particularly in markets like Kenya or Ethiopia, which is so rich in renewable energy, for example. But opportunities around job creation and sustainability, which I think are very positive, and we should be grasping that.
FSD Africa understands the value of nature on our continent. Nature can be one of Africa's biggest financial assets, but we need financial innovation to unlock it.
We're eroding the natural world and the natural capital that we have at an unprecedented and unsustainable rate. And for Africa, that's particularly important. Africa is blessed with a huge amount of natural resources, natural capital, that really presents an opportunity for the continent.
Of course, we're trying to address two things. One is the nexus between development and, of course, environmental benefits. And Africa is actually very uniquely placed around that because it's a continent that is very rich in natural capital.
Just to show that, there are different ways in which you can utilize some of these financial instruments. So again, similarly with, work we're doing on nature, again, we're looking at how do we monetize, the nature that we have and the biodiversity that we have on the continent. One, you need to make sure that you conserve it because it's a big issue. At the moment, the biodiversity loss in Africa is extremely high. I mean, it's the highest across the world. So we're losing species of animals, we're losing species of trees, and that has a huge impact. But when you look at businesses and, the sort of program we're doing is to make sure that they understand that their programs where they're investing, it's not leading to loss, but it's actually conserving. So that's quite important.
And finance can play a role in that. And that's why we at FSD Africa have begun putting a lot of focus around monetizing the natural capital using capital markets instruments, including carbon markets or carbon-linked bonds and all that.
Of the nearly 36,000 full-time equivalent jobs we have created by 2020, 40% of them have been filled by females.
So how do you get finance to women more and enable them to deploy it in efficient ways? So what are the tools and instruments that you would use for that, for instance? Side the gender bonds is about supporting the market and getting issuers ready to do an issue, which then crowds in a lot of capital, massive amount of capital to women that need it. The Women's World Banking Project was about 5 million quid, direct investment by FSD Africa. Gender bonds is a different level. It's quite a lot of money. I think we did probably, if I'm not wrong, about 30 million just in Tanzania alone. Yeah.
I have seen the issuance of the gender bond, the first gender bond in sub-Saharan Africa that was issued by the National Microfinance Bank in Tanzania. So the support that was provided was to enable that the bond issuance into the market, bringing the transaction to the market so that the different investors can invest in it. And the bank was able to raise money whose usage is specifically to women. They have different categories. So depending on an institution, it could be women-owned business or women-led business or businesses that produce items that are utilized by women.
Our piece of work on gender bonds is quite inspirational. It's cutting edge, it's transformative, and it's sustainable. That means that we have to leverage sustainable instruments in raising funds for women-owned, women-managed entrepreneurship.
FSD Africa always looks to Africa's future in the program we put together.
So business models that accelerate digital transformation to boost things like energy access, food security, agricultural productivity, climate and health resilience. So those are some of the key parameters we look at in making investments.
One of the best things about working for the digital economy pillar is just how relevant I guess it is. it's one of the most essential tools for inclusion, for reaching people at the last mile.
Working with refugees to provide the digital cash transfers or the digital payments. So Equity was engaged by different, I think almost 8 agencies were pushing their cash transfer programs through Equity, and they had a digital platform. So they set up agents in these settlements, and refugees could basically get the services using the card or going to the agents.
Working with Equity BCDC is really exciting because they're really focused on getting finance to the last mile through digital channels. So through USSD, mobile, online apps that they've developed to enable their agents to onboard new clients and to give these people the essential financial tools they need. So I really enjoy working on that project.
The COVID-19 pandemic created a whole new set of challenges. We saw an 87% increase in remittances to help families survive the health emergency. FSD Africa stepped in with programs to save jobs and whole industries.
COVID really affected quite obviously a number of countries, and from a business point of view, our role, one, ensuring that we could still have capital being provided to institutions, to SMEs to continue doing their businesses through some of the funds that we support.
We would like to look back at 10 years of successes, which are the foundation, and perhaps the lessons that will shape our path to tackling tomorrow's challenges.
So part of the flexibility is all in the sort of strategic vision, and we have great leadership, which has meant that we've been very nimble on the strategy, and that has enabled us to move with the times, adapt to what our donor wants, and actually to some extent lead the way on what the donor needs and expects.
I think it's the purpose of the organization, the excellent colleagues, you're challenged every day, the latitude to think, to challenge, to engage all the way at board level and be heard. That makes a difference.
So I think FSD Africa has great leadership, starting from the CEO, Mark Napier. I think FSD Africa is where it is right now because of his leadership model, which I think is great.
We have an amazing board from different parts of the African continent and African financial sector that give us guidance on the opportunities, on the stakeholders, who are the sort of thought leaders. So they played a very significant role.
FSD Africa's work is as vital now as it's ever been. You are leading the charge to ensure Africa gets the finance it needs to meet the continent's urgent development and climate challenges.
Happy 10th anniversary FSD Africa. Very proud to be part of the team in FSD Africa, supporting capital market development in the continent.
FSD Africa, making finance work for Africa's future.